Hello everyone, and welcome to Foxy's Quiz World. In each round, you'll see two landmarks, but only one is located in the country shown. Your task is to choose the correct option, A or B, and you have just 3 seconds to make your choice. The quiz includes 50 fast questions that go one after another. This is your chance to check how well you know world geography and recognize famous places from around the globe. Are you ready? Let's get started. First question. Which landmark is in France? Eiffel Tower or Opera House? Eiffel Tower. Which landmark is in Italy? Leaning Tower or Christ the Redeemer? Leaning Tower. Which landmark is in the United States? Statue of Liberty or Tower? Statue of Liberty. Which landmark is in the United Kingdom? Uluru or Big Ben? Big Ben. Fifth question. Which landmark is in Canada? CN Tower or Sagrada Familia? CN Tower. Which landmark is in Japan? Mount Fuji or Machu Picchu? Mount Fuji. Which landmark is in China? Acropolis or Great Wall? Great Wall. Which landmark is in Brazil? Sugarloaf Mountain or Grand Canyon? Sugarloaf Mountain. Which landmark is in Spain? Park Güell or St. Basil's Cathedral? Park Güell. Next question. Which landmark is in Australia? Burj Khalifa or Harbour Bridge? Harbour Bridge. Which landmark is in Egypt? Great Pyramid of Giza or Stonehenge? Great Pyramid of Giza. Which landmark is in Mexico? Meraki Boulders or Chichen Itza? Chichen Itza. Which landmark is in Greece? Parthenon or Petra? Parthenon. Which landmark is in Turkey? Palace of Versailles or Hagia Sophia? Hagia Sophia. 15th question. Which landmark is in Germany? Brandenburg Gate or Taj Mahal? Brandenburg Gate. Which landmark is in the UAE? Burj Khalifa or Hollywood sign? Burj Khalifa. Which landmark is in India? Red Fort or Table Mountain? Red Fort. Which landmark is in Croatia? Varanasi or Diocletian's Palace? Diocletian's Palace. Which landmark is in South Korea? Gyeongbokgung Palace or Nazca Lines? Gyeongbokgung Palace. Next question. Which landmark is in South Africa? Kruger National Park or Notre Dame Cathedral? Kruger National Park. Which landmark is in Argentina? Iguazu Falls or Blue Mosque? Iguazu Falls. Which landmark is in Peru? Angkor Wat or Lake Titicaca? Lake Titicaca. Which landmark is in Thailand? Wat Arun or Great Sphinx? Wat Arun. Which landmark is in Indonesia? Borobudur or Blarney Castle? Borobudur. 25th question. Which landmark is in Singapore? Trevi Fountain or Marina Bay Sands? Marina Bay Sands. Which landmark is in Malaysia? Petronas Towers or Mount Kilimanjaro? Petronas Towers. Which landmark is in Morocco? Gemma El Fna or Mount Etna? Gemma El Fna. Which landmark is in Saudi Arabia? Golden Temple or Kaaba? Kaaba. Which landmark is in Jordan? Louvre Museum or Al-Khazneh? Al-Khazneh. Next question. Which landmark is in Israel? Western Wall or Vasa Museum? Western Wall. Which landmark is in Portugal? Belém Tower or Nymphenburg Palace? Belém Tower. Which landmark is in the Netherlands? Forbidden City or Kinderdijk Windmills? Kinderdijk Windmills. Which landmark is in Denmark? The Little Mermaid or Christchurch Cathedral? The Little Mermaid. Which landmark is in Sweden? City Hall or Meenakshi Temple? Stockholm City Hall. 35th question. Which landmark is in Norway? Edinburgh Castle or Geiranger Fjord? Geiranger Fjord. Which landmark is in Finland? Cathedral or Giant's Causeway? Helsinki Cathedral. Which landmark is in Ukraine? Saint Sophia Cathedral or Atomium? Saint Sophia Cathedral. Which landmark is in Poland? Mount Sinai or Wawel Castle? Wawel Castle. Which landmark is in Czechia? Castle or Lotus Temple? Prague Castle. Next question. Which landmark is in Austria? Gateway Arch or Schönbrunn Palace? Schönbrunn Palace. Which landmark is in Switzerland? Matterhorn or Alhambra? Matterhorn. Which landmark is in Belgium? Monica Piece or Skansen? Monica Piece. Which landmark is in New Zealand? Times Square or Milford Sound? Milford Sound. Which landmark is in the Philippines? Banaue Rice Terraces or Burj Al Arab? Banaue Rice Terraces. Next question. Which landmark is in Chile? Hawa Mahal or Torres del Paine? Torres del Paine. Which landmark is in Cuba? Castillo del Morro or Carcassonne? Castillo del Morro. Which landmark is in Jamaica? Himeji Castle or Dunn's River Falls? Dunn's River Falls. Which landmark is in Lebanon? Baalbek or Sacré-Cœur? Baalbek. Which landmark is in Pakistan? Giant Buddha of Lishan or Badshahi Mosque? Badshahi Mosque. Next question. Which landmark is in Iceland? Temple of Heaven or Hallgrímskirkja? Hallgrímskirkja.